Hi, welcome to We Love History Live. I'm Jo Nielsen. I'm a falconer and a vet, and I'm here with Graeme Nielsen, who is a falconer, to talk to you about falconry in Scotland's past and present today. Now, this is a live Q&A, so if you have any questions for us at all, please feel free to put them on the comments or YouTube, and we will try and get to your questions as we go through. We might not answer them immediately, but we will try and get to all the questions. And if we don't get a chance to answer them straight away, then we will answer all the questions in the comments afterwards. So please do put your questions up if you have any for us. Let me introduce Graeme. Graeme is the owner of Strathblane Falconry, and he has been a falconer for 20 years. I myself have been involved with birds of prey for 19 years. So between us, we should hopefully be able to tell you quite a lot about the birds. And I'm going to hand over to Graeme to tell us, to start off with, what falconry is, where it originated from, and what it's like to be a falconer today. So, Graeme, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this question and answer session with Historic Environment Scotland on falconry. Okay, falconry, in its traditional sense, it was a form of hunting birds from the wild, normally a raptor. By raptor, we mean the hawks, the falcons. In this country or in Europe, buzzards. To any people from America, buzzard is not a vulture. Buzzard is completely different in this country, and they do hunt. And in certain parts of the world, eagles as well. But there's not been a great tradition historically of flying eagles in this country for falconry. But the bird would be taken from the wild, it would be trained up, and it would be used to go and catch a quarry or a prey species. There was two reasons for this. One, it was a way of putting food on the table, and two, it was for the upper classes. It was entertainment. Hunting as a whole was a sort of massive sort of form of entertainment for the upper classes that they put a lot of time and effort into. As to where falconry started, that's a bit more complicated. It's one of these things that's probably lost a little bit in the mist of time. There are various theories and arguments to say where it started, from sort of like the Far East to the Middle East. I suspect Europe was a little bit later getting in on the act. As to when it started, like I said, I couldn't tell you exactly. In this country, in Scotland, one of the earliest pieces of one of the earliest examples of falconry is actually a Pictish stone carving, which we think is dated about 8th, 9th century, and there is an image of somebody on horseback with a bird in their arm, and the stone carving is depicting a hunting scene. So, I mean, we can kind of go, yeah, it's been over 1,000 years in this country, easily. You could be looking at maybe 12, even 1,300 years going here. As to what falconry is like today, falconry, to be honest, or the term falconer is, and the term falconry is very much a very general term the way it's used today, and basically it's anybody who works or has a bird of prey, and that would cover the owls as well, which have never been really classed traditionally as a falconry bird. The owls, just the way they fly and the issues of their training in the past, would never have been used as falconry birds. The closest they got was eagle owls being used in the sort of the process of the hunt, but they weren't actually used to sort of pursue or catch anything, even though they are very large, powerful predators who have got a good turn of speed on them, but they were never used as the actual hunting bird itself. So yeah, no, falconry is basically anybody who does today flies or works with birds of prey.
Obviously, we know you've got quite a variety of birds. We can see some of the images coming up there of some of your birds.
Yes.
And we can hear some of them in the background. If anyone's wondering what those strange squawking noises are, that's some of the birds.
There's one or two of them. They can see me while I'm on camera, and they're just sort of reminding me that, yeah, they're still to be fed. But they'll be fed shortly, so they'll be okay.
So perhaps you could tell us a bit about some of your birds, what species you've got, how old they are, and maybe some of the differences between them.
Yeah, certainly. The oldest bird in the centre would be Lopey. He was bird number one. He was my first bird of my team. He's a Turkmenian eagle owl, and he's 18 years old, so he is the oldest. But we've got birds that are all different ages. I mean, last year we got a few new birds to add to the team. And we have different birds for different things in the type of work that we do. Lobie, for example, you'll never see him at a Historic Scotland event. He doesn't like big events. He's never really that settled at them. So I don't take him a lot. I have another eagle owl who I generally use for those big events, and Corey. And Corey he's just like, yeah, okay. He's very relaxed and he doesn't really get too stressed out. That's Corey in the picture there, with me with long hair. So yeah, like I said, we have different birds. We have sort of Harris hawks today, which is sort of like the modern falconry bird of choice today in this country. And we have a team of those that we use for various things like activity days and stuff like that. And we have a selection of owls that we use for various things for educational purposes and flying displays, depending on what we're requested to do. And we also have the falcons as well, which we use for historical work, for education and display purposes as well. So no, we have different birds, different things, and I try and sort of have a variety of sort of different birds that I can use so as to cover all aspects of what falconry is today.
And you mentioned that Lobie doesn't like going off-site, whereas Corey obviously doesn't mind it. Do they all have their own characters and personalities that you could tell them apart that way?
Yeah, I mean, Lobie, to be fair to him, it's not that he doesn't like going off-site. He does plenty of work off-site. He's actually really good off-site. He does a lot of corporate work, and so we're dealing with small private parties, normally very nice venues like stately homes, and he's great at all that. I think it's just when we go and do like a large event like Historic Scotland, just a lot of people, there's a lot going on and he's just not that comfortable. So he does that. But no, they've all got their own personalities. Lobie is, for example, he's a quite a high energy owl, which sounds really odd because owls are normally quite easygoing or laid back. But Lobie seems to have real get up and go. Corey, on the other hand, he's very, very laid back, very easygoing. Nothing seems to faze him. And he's a slower individual. And he's maybe not quite as quick off the mark. He's certainly not quite as quick off the mark as Lobie when you call him. But he's just, yeah, nothing seems to really sort of bother him. And so in some ways, each bird's got its strengths and each bird's got its weakness. And it's just a simple case of sometimes picking the right bird for the right event. Horses for courses, as they say.
And do you have a preference over sort of one type or the other, or are there any individual characters that stand out particularly to you?
I have a preference depending on what type of event I'm doing. Certainly, I mean, if I'm doing a large event, Corey is the one that I'm sort of kind of reaching for. I'm sort of trying to look at Corey and thinking, yeah, he's the one, because I know he'll fly and I know he's reliable. But I mean, I don't really have sort of a preference. I try not to have preferences or like a favourite. And so people ask me, you got a favourite bird? Which one of your team is the favourite? And I try not to have a favourite because I feel like I've got a team of just over 20 birds, and it'd be unfair to have a favourite. There's always that temptation to put a little more time and effort into your favourite, and that could be to the detriment of one of the others. So I generally try and treat them all equal, and we sort of work with them in different ways depending on who's flying and what events are coming up and things like that.
We've had a question from Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
She would like to know whether there's a bird in your collection, whether there's a bird you would like to have in your collection that you don't yet have.
There's always one of those. Simple one. I'd like a ger. But gers, back in sort of like the Renaissance period, the medieval period, they were the king's bird, and it goes back to the fact that they're the largest falcon in the world. So they are big, they're impressive. They come in a couple of colours. You can get like silver ones or black ones, or you can get the white ones. I love a white one. And they were difficult to get hold of because you were talking about a bird that basically comes from the Arctic Circle. So back in medieval times, Renaissance times, you got the logistics of sending people up to the Arctic Circle from mainland Europe, Western Europe, to trap these birds and then get them back to Europe alive. Bear in mind, there was obviously no planes, so it was either all on foot or by boat, and getting them back. So there's major logistics of these. So these birds are very much reserved for the king, and they've always been in high demand and always very expensive. Now today, we don't take anything from the wild in this country. Everything is bred in captivity, but gers are still very expensive and very in sort of high demand. Too expensive for me. But yeah, one of those would be nice. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. They're beautiful birds, but you do have a sort of compromise, don't you? You've got a bird that's parturier.
I've got a parturier. Yeah, you can get parturiers now. What's called a hybrid, where they've crossed different falcons, and they're a bit more in my price range. And he is. I'll show him later on. He is. Yeah, you can see that he's got parturier. He's got the colour of a white ger, or traces of it. He's not as white as maybe a pure ger. He's certainly not as white as a pure ger. White ger, but he has got. You can see that there's ger in him. But yeah, that'd be the one. So you get that. But I suspect there's a lot of people who work with birds of prey would be like, yeah, that's the one I would want.
And you mentioned that the birds obviously used to be taken from the wild traditionally, but they aren't anymore. So your birds are all captive bred, aren't they?
Yes, everything has been captive bred. Today, falconry in this country, nothing has been sort of taken from the wild. Really, the whole sort of practice of taking birds from the wild kind of stopped a couple of decades ago, and it was mainly just due to the fact that people started breeding birds in captivity, and because birds are being bred in captivity, it obviously doesn't put a strain on wild populations. And breeding in captivity, it was easier just to get a bird from in captive bred than it was from the wild. So, like I said, everything is now sort of captive bred, and like I said, it's trained up. The birds themselves, I mean, they still hold a lot of the wild instincts. I mean, when you get them, they're still sort of fearful of people. So you've got to sort of train them in what we do, man them down, and that's something that would be done traditionally with the bird. But you've got to man them down, get them used to you, and work with them and sort of show them that yes, they should be with you because you're sort of providing the food and things like that, and build up that sort of working relationship with them.
We've just had a question come in there from Alison. Let me get that one back because it was a bit too quick for me to read all of that. So Alison, thank you for asking your question. She's saying that she loves the hoods that the birds of prey wear.
Yes.
Can they be worn second hand, or does each bird need to have one specifically made for them? Obviously, we can see actually some sitting there behind you as well.
Let me grab a hood and let you have a closer look. There's various styles of hood. This would be classed as more of a sort of a Dutch block hood. It's maybe not the traditional sense in the fact that the plume, this bit here, is a little bit set far back. A normal traditional Dutch hood would have the plume a wee bit more up at the top, but this is sort of like the Dutch hood, and it's a bit more sort of rounded and stuff like that. This would be referred to as an Anglo-Indian hood, and you can see the sort of stitching down there. It's a slightly different sort of shape to the block one. Both hoods are fine. In the question that they're made specially for the bird, no. Basically, you can get them made, and people put a lot of time and effort into getting them made, and people spend a lot of money sometimes on getting hoods made. And basically, when it's kind of when you know what type of bird it is and whether it's a male or a female, the hood, you just sort of say, "Oh, I'm looking for something for a tiercel," which is the name we give to a male peregrine. And the supplier, he'll just send you a hood for that size of bird. You don't have to sort of measure for it and have it custom built. You just sort of tell him what type of bird. He may ask you what weight the bird flies at to gauge its size, if it's quite a large individual or maybe a smaller individual. And so you could have a hood. You do that. So I mean, they come in all different sizes, and today they come in all different designs. I've seen them sort of like hand painted logos, caricatures, and the birds on them. I've seen people put transfers on them, like Royal Air Force logos from the Second World War, shark's teeth, drawn eyes on them, so the bird looks like they've got big eyes on the hood. I've seen them trimmed in silks and tweed. I've seen feathers on plumes. You can go a bit mad with the hoods if you wanted to. But yeah, no, you just tell the supplier what bird, what size of bird, how big the bird is, and they'll send you a hood.
And they used to be quite.
Sorry?
They used to be quite ornate, didn't they? Hoods,
yes,
traditionally could be very jewelled and glamorous as a bit of a status symbol, or?
Yes, they were. The birds themselves in the Renaissance period and the medieval period, if you could afford a bird, you were somebody, okay? And you were obviously wealthy, well-to-do in the upper classes, and people wanted to show off that wealth and that status. And so the hoods, they could be intricately sort of like hand-painted with gold paint and all sorts of things like that. And they're stunning, and they're real works of art. And I've seen a couple in museums and stuff like that, and they are stunning. But from a practical sense of point of view, I couldn't use them. I honestly couldn't use them. Hoods, they have a hard life. They get dropped in the mud. Birds pull them off and chew on them, and people lose them. There's all sorts of stuff happen to them. And I think if I had a really nice, intricate, delicate hood with all this lovely paintwork and trim on it, and it just got trashed, I think I'd be really upset. So I always just go for very standard, plain leather hoods that, yeah, if I stand on it or squash it, or something gets dropped on it, or the birds decide to chew on it because I've left it within reach, I'm not too upset. I'm upset, but I'm not too upset. But no, they were. But everything went like that. Even the glove that people had for the upper classes, it was a very ornate, intricate piece of clothing, shall we say, or an accessory. And it was more about sort of showing off and status than actual for practical use.
Well, that's really interesting. And we've had a bit of a question come in about the relationship with the birds, because obviously you have to train all your birds because you free fly them, and you need them to be able to come back to you. And we're being asked, is this, do they come back because they know you and they trust you, or is this relationship purely based on food? Is it quite a different relationship that people would have, for example, with their pet dog?
I'd say it's very different to a dog. Dogs, first and foremost, is a loyalty thing. A dog will more often not be happy if you call your dog to come and see you. And the training might start off with food, but dogs are quite happy just to sort of hang out with you, sit with you, be with you, and be close to you because you're part of their pack. And so they have they'll have a different mindset on it all. A bird of prey, on the other hand, traditionally is a solitary individual who really sort of pairs up with a partner for breeding purposes, and so they're not used to sort of being part of a team. And so you have to build up that working relationship. Now, they come back to me because, yes, I'm offering them food. I have something that they want. And they'll never come to me just out of loyalty and affection. It is food. So if the bird's not hungry enough, then no, it won't come to me. But at the same time, it's also got to be able to trust me and feel comfortable with me as well. And the fact that it knows who I am. And it'll say, yeah, if I go to Graeme, I'm going to get that food reward. I know him and I can trust him and I will get that food. And so, like I was saying, there is a sort of an element of trust in it and respect. But there's also, like I said, ultimately the bird has got to be hungry. I've got birds in my team who, like one of the Harrisocks, for example, I've had him 15 years. We have a great working relationship. He flies well. He does a lot of events, corporate events, and he's great. But if he is not hungry, he is a nightmare. And I can't get near him. And he will fly to nobody. Doesn't make any difference what he did the week before and when he nailed it. He was hungry then and he was focused. But if he's not hungry, he's just, I don't care what's going on. This is not happening.
And I think you've got some of the birds there that we can meet.
I'll go and get Corey because I've mentioned him. I'm aware I've mentioned him a couple of times. We'll bring Corey over. Corey is always he's popular. He's the eagle owl who does a lot of the events at Historic Scotland. This summer he's having a nice break. He's had quite an easy summer so far. We haven't actually worked with Corey since February. He's been getting a well-earned break. Saying that, he is due to start flying again, and we're going to start working with him again in the next couple of weeks. It's probably the next 2 to 3 weeks. Corey is going to be back working again and flying at the centre. So if you can just give me a couple of minutes, I'm just going to duck out. I will bring Corey, who's on the slides there.
That's Corey. We can see on the screen there at one of our events. And as Graeme says, he's quite a big, quite imposing bird. The European eagle owl is fairly well known and certainly the largest of the owl species. Corey is a fairly familiar face at quite a few of the Historic Scotland events. You can see him again there doing his best eyebrows for that one. And you'll probably hear from him as he gets close as well because
here we are.
he has a bit to say for himself. There he is.
So yeah, this is Corrie. He's a European eagle owl. So they're generally regarded as one of the largest. I believe there is a fish owl in Russia that, bigger than them. But they're generally regarded as one of the largest owls in the world. To be honest, Corrie, while he does look quite big and maybe even a little bit intimidating, as European eagle owls go, he is a bit of a lightweight. He is a male, and in the bird of prey world, the females are always bigger. And it doesn't make any difference in an owl or a raptor. They're all bigger, the females. Corrie, we're pretty sure is a male, but even as males go, he's a little bit on the small side. But no, he's a good bird to work with. We've been together 17 years. And so he's always very reliable. He's just sort of looking around wondering why he's in the tack room and nothing's happening. So yeah, no, this is Corrie. Like I said, he's a good bird. The big thing about Corrie is there's a couple of features about Corrie that I've always found very impressive. One is his eyes. I'll just bring him up closer to the camera. And you have lovely, huge, big orange eyes. Corrie, can you help me out a little bit and look at the camera?
He's showing us beautifully how Corrie can turn his head.
And we've got the side of his head, which is not helping me. Fortunately, moving the body around doesn't do much because he's got so much movement. There we go. So he's beautiful big eyes. And the other thing about Corrie or the European eagle owl, which always fascinates me, is, if I bring him up again, just keep bringing him up, is the size of the feet and the talons. He's got big, heavy set feet and talons. This is always a sign when you're looking at birds of prey. If you look at if the feet and the talons are big in comparison to the rest of the bird, and it's always a sign of a good hunter. So certain species have actually really small feet, and it can tell you they're a bit more. They might hunt, but they're probably leaning more towards being a scavenger. The classic one is what we refer to as a common buzzard. They look, when you see them up in the sky, they look really big, but their feet are actually really quite small. Birds that are of similar size, like the Harris hawk, their feet are twice as big as what a buzzard's got. So it tells you the buzzard, yes, he does hunt, but he's not maybe the best. The red kite's another one who'd fall into that category. They look quite big, and kites are a wee bit deceiving because they're all sort of wing, tail, and feather, but their feet are actually really quite small, which once again tells you that it's a bird that's maybe more of a bit of a scavenger than an actual hunter. So,
although he's a good hunter, they weren't traditionally used for that, though, right?
No. Don't do anything stupid quite like jump around. No, they were never used. These guys, I mean, they can be trained to hunt, and I do have an eagle owl who hunts. He saw an opportunity and he took it. And they're quick and they're fast. I mean, they're faster than, say, a rabbit, for example. They can chase a rabbit down. The problem the eagle owl's got is that for all his size and his strength and his speed and his acceleration that make him a formidable and fantastic predator, if he's actually got to chase something, which falconry is all really about the sort of the chase and the pursuit, these guys can't do it. And the simple reason is he cannot turn quickly at full speed. He's not that agile. He can turn quickly, but he has to almost do an emergency stop to make the turn. And he can turn at full speed, but watching him turn at full speed is a bit like watching a jumbo jet trying to turn at full speed. It's not a quick process. So what he relies on, and don't jump around, is this fantastic plumage that he's got to sort of camouflage and ambush his prey. And so the eagle owl, yes, he does hunt and he is a fantastic predator, but when you do falconry, you're basically flying the birds to their strengths. And it's kind of difficult to do that with an eagle owl with the way they hunt, to fly them to their strengths and be successful at it. So
if Corrie's getting a bit fidgety there, we'll maybe let him go back and possibly could see a more traditional falconry bird.
Yeah. What I should say is, just talking about the whole hunting process, I said the eagle owls were part of the process, and something I should have pointed out, back in Renaissance times when falconry was going through a sort of a real sort of surge in popularity, the eagle owl was, as I said, part of the process, and they were actually used as a lure bird. Now, we don't do this today in falconry because it's basically unethical, and it'd be illegal as well in this country. But back then, you're talking about in the Renaissance period, medieval period, there wasn't that sort of concern about animal welfare. I mean, they didn't do human rights back then, so they're not going to do animal welfare or animal rights back then. But they would actually use these as a lure bird to attract in things like red kites, which they would fly the ger at. So this is why I'm sort of saying they were part of the process, even though they're not traditionally a falconry bird. And this is why Corrie would come along, just to sort of say, if you went out hunting using ger falcons to hunt red kite, the eagle owl would be part of the team. It would be brought along and he'd be sort of blocked out, something would be tied to his feet like a piece of fur, like a fox's tail, and red kites would see this as a bird that they'd caught something and they want to come in and have a look and see if they can maybe pick up some scraps, at which point he'd be cleared away, because what you don't want is the jur flying into him to try and take his kill off him, because he'd killed the jur. And then the jur would be released at the red kite. So like I said, he was part of the process. Now what we'll do is we'll put him away, and I will get a bird that's maybe a bit more of a traditional falconry bird. So you can just give me a couple of minutes.
Just before Corey disappears, we've just
Yes.
been asked what his wingspan is.
What his wingspan is? The honest answer, I've never held him down and measured. I don't think Corey would allow me to do it. I think that would be just taking our relationship a step too far. I think there's probably the best part of about 5 feet there, which is probably translating into about sort of 1.5 meters. When you go from tip to tip, and when you measure a bird's wingspan, it's never just one wing. It's from the longest primary feather, and that's the feathers at the end of the wing, sort of like from each one, and that gives you the sort of the best idea of the biggest part of the wingspan and the length of the wingspan. So yeah, I think there's sort of about 5 feet there. I have worked with a few eagle owls who have been bigger than Corey, and I'm pretty sure they're sort of flying around with a 6-foot wingspan. Looking at them, it certainly looks like it's the best part of 6 feet when it's coming towards you. So yeah, like I said, so as I said, he's impressive. He's a good size, but he's not the biggest by any purposes or by any extent. So if you give us a couple of minutes, we'll just put, or a couple of seconds, I should say, we'll put him away, and I'll get a more traditional bird. Right, Corey, let's go. Like I said, he's just wondering why he's in the tack room. Normally he comes in here, gets weighed, and then he's put back in his aviary and he's fed.
We'll let Corey go back into his aviary, wait for his dinner. And we had a question come in from Ethan and Kiara, who were asking which is Graeme's favourite bird. Now, he did mention earlier that he doesn't have one individual favourite because he has to like all of his team equally. But I can tell you that that he definitely has a bit more of a soft spot for the falcons than the owls. And I think I'm right in saying that it's a falcon that he's going to show us next. And you can see an example of some of his falcons on the screen there just now. So that there is the peregrine falcon, who is the fastest living creature on the planet and an absolutely spectacular bird to fly. I have quite a soft spot for the peregrine. And we can also see a lanner falcon there, who are lovely big falcons, and quite a popular one, of quite a crowd pleaser at events. And Graeme is bringing us another falcon to have a look at. Who have we got here, Graeme?
This is Tyree. Tyree's wearing his hood, so this is more the sort of the classic image of falconry that a lot of people come to sort of associate or think when they think of falconry, that image of the bird sitting on the glove with the hood on. The hood, he's perfectly happy with his hood. The hood is, if it's just demonstrating taking it off, you use your teeth to loosen it, and you hold the hood by the plume. This is this bit here. You never hold the hood by the side when you're taking it off and on, because you could push the leather up against the bird's eye, and that would obviously be very uncomfortable and injure the bird. So we always use the plume, and you just slide it off his head, and you can take it off, and we can see Tyree here. And like I said, he has no issues with the hood. You can see I took it off nice and slowly, and he had no issues. And even if I put it back on, we can just put it back on, and we do the hood up again. The hood is something we have been using in falconry right from the early days, probably when falconry started. And it's a way of just calming the bird down. If it doesn't see anything, the bird settles down. You can sort of hide things from the bird that it might actually find a little bit stressful. Today, while it's used for that, it's also used to keep the bird sort of fresh. So if you're going to fly the bird, the problem with falcons is they're the equivalent of a sprinter, and they fly really hard, really fast. And when they're flying, they're really sort of pushing themselves to the limit and redlining it. And you know what it's like yourself. If you have to sprint somewhere, it's a short burst. So when it comes to flying them, you want the energy levels, the fuel tanks, to be at full. So when it comes to letting the bird go and flying, it can fly as hard and as fast for as long as possible. And so this is why the hood is on the bird. And back in sort of the historical times, the bird, they would be on horseback, the bird would be wearing its hood. And when it came to sort of flying the bird, the hood was taken off and the bird would be released and allowed to fly at the chosen quarry, which would be, it could be anything back then. They would fly at crows, they would fly at game birds, so your things like your partridge or pheasants. Teddy, just turn this on. But even in certain parts of Europe, the done thing was to fly them at cranes and herons, and in Renaissance times it was the red kite. So they would fly falcons at a huge variety of birds and get different flights. But the thing was, you wanted the bird to be able to fly as hard and as fast for as long as possible. And this is why we used the hood. So just take your hood off again.
And we can see there when you're taking the hood off, you obviously have to get quite close to that rather sharp beak. And yeah, we have been asked, do you ever get hurt at all by the birds?
The simple answer is yes. All right, Heidi, come on. The simple answer is yes, but I'm a great believer in not taking liberties with the bird. And so if I don't take liberties with it, I don't put myself sort of in harm's way. To be honest, in the early days, you think that's you'd be more likely to get hurt. The bird would be more likely to lash out. But normally, when you start the training and the bird's untrained, they tend to be actually more scared. And come on, settle down. This is not our normal routine for them, because they're all a bit like, why are we standing here? We come in here, we get weighed, we go off and we get flown or we get fed. So they're all kind of a bit like, what's going on today? And he knows he's kind of thinking, well, I've done my bit in here and I want to go out. So yeah, there's more sort of scared of you than trying to get away, and that's our priority. What I'll do is I'll just put him away, give him a minute.
So yes, I can speak from the veterinary point of view when it comes to getting hurt as well, because clearly birds of prey are quite well equipped with very sharp talons and very sharp beaks, and they are not afraid to use them if they feel they need to defend themselves. Less likely to do something silly.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of build up a working relationship very much in trust and respect. As I was sort of saying, actually, when the bird gets better trained and more confident with you, that's when it's actually more liable to actually maybe take a shot at you and do something. I find, because there's less fear on the bird's part, and it's just thinking, you know what, yeah, I can bite you, or yeah, I will foot you, and I will sort of hit you with my talons or grab hold of you. So I sort of find that actually the birds that I've been working with longer are probably more likely to take a shot at me, if that. But certain species can be prone to it. Some birds have got a bit of some species have a reputation for having a bit of a temper. Prairie falcons, for example, that you get in the Americas, they have. I've never actually worked with a pure prairie, but I did have a prairie cross, and for the first 2 years she had a wicked temper and quite an impressive tantrum. If you did anything to annoy her, and she was pretty quick off the mark to have a wee nibble of me every so often. But then we got into her third year, and I don't know, maybe she just got through being an adolescent and a teenager, and she was lovely. It was just like, yeah, okay, we're fine, we're friends, and she was a really lovely bird to be around. But yeah, those first 2 years, it didn't take a lot to sort of get her going or push her buttons and get her in a bit of a temper. But as a rule, no, I'm normally very comfortable working with birds because, like I said, I don't take liberties. I don't look on them as like we're friends. I don't look on it as like a dog and I have a special bond. I always feel that there's a sort of clear boundaries to what's acceptable and unacceptable, and I sort of try and respect those boundaries. And I find that doesn't put me in harm's way. So yeah, I don't really get hurt. Touch wood. I'm sort of probably tempting fate here. I'm probably going to get whacked for that. But no, I don't take, like I said, I don't do the whole special bond thing, which some people like to go on about. And I feel when you go on about that, just people use it as an excuse to start taking liberties and overstep the boundaries. And then you're putting yourself, the bird, or somebody else at risk.
Yeah, because ultimately these aren't domesticated animals, are they? They're still wild at heart. And we had a question in about wild birds. Someone's wanting to know what's the most common bird of prey in Scotland.
The most common one, that's the buzzard. It's sometimes known as the common buzzard, or the European buzzard, or the Eurasian buzzard, or a buzzard, or the buzzard. And in certain parts of Scotland, it's affectionately known as the tourist eagle. So they tell the tourists, oh, there's another eagle flying overhead. It is a common buzzard. Buzzards, they're lovely birds to look and fly, watch them fly. To work with, they're hard going. They're tough, they're stubborn. They take a lot. They can be quite lazy and a lot to be motivated. They are, yeah, but it's the most common bird. I don't have one at the moment. I have worked with one. I've worked with a couple actually. And they're always lovely, but they can be hard work. But yeah, they are the most common bird we have in Scotland today, and certainly in the UK, they are the most common bird.
And I think you've got another UK species for us to see. I think we've got time to meet more birds.
We'll get to Snitch. Make a quick appearance with Snitch.
While Graham's going to get Snitch, I'm going to answer one of the other questions that's just come in about vaccinations. We're being asked, do the birds need annual vaccinations like domestic pets? And the short answer to that is no, thankfully. We don't have to try and inject these birds every year, which would be challenging. They do sometimes need preventative healthcare like worming treatments, but we usually do those after testing to see if there's a problem and treating them rather than any kind of annual injections or regular preventative pills or medications. And I shall hand back over to Graeme because he has a rather noisy little companion there.
Yeah, this is probably one of the best well-known birds. They used to be the most common, but they're not anymore. The buzzard has taken that, and I'd probably say they're actually probably the third most common bird of prey in Scotland or in the UK. Unfortunately, the numbers have declined a bit, and nobody's really unsure why, because they're probably one of the most versatile and adaptable birds we have in this country. And it could be the fact that there's more birds of prey around in the environment. So because he's small, he would have more predators. Birds of prey in the wild kill each other. This little noisy individual is Snitch. Now, he is a common kestrel or European kestrel or Eurasian kestrel in this country. We just refer to them as kestrels. He is a male. If you look at him, he's got this lovely grey head, and if I lift him up a bit so you can see, he has a grey tail. And so he is an adult male. They go this colour in the first year. If they have just sort of more brown with black bars on their back, the head and the tail, that's the sign of a female kestrel. And if they say they've got the sort of black bars on the back and their head, on the back of their wings and their head, and sort of a light grey tail, they'll say that's a juvenile male in his first year. But a year old, the male kestrel goes this colour, and then it's there's no argument or debate as to whether he's a male or a female. So yeah, these guys, they were never really classed as a falconry bird. They were kind of the bottom of the pile of all the birds that you could fly back then. The kestrel was very much, you've heard the phrase kestrel for a knave, and while different classes could fly different birds, the knave, who was the bottom of the pile, was given the kestrel. And part of the reason who got to fly what bird was dictated by basically how well the bird hunted and what type of food it could put on the table. And the kestrel, if you want to fly this, I mean, if you were lucky, he might take out something like a blackbird or a thrush for you. So he wasn't really going to put good food on the table. You weren't going to eat well flying a kestrel, and they were allowed to do that. But the other group that were allowed to fly kestrels, or did fly kestrels, were children. And you'd have children in the royal court, and they might be given a kestrel, and this is the bird that they were given to learn their falconry skills. Today, kestrels, they're certainly wouldn't give them to children. They're very small, very delicate, and one of the more difficult birds to work with. A lot of people seem to think, oh, God, small, it must be quite easy to work with. He's actually one of the more difficult birds to work with due to his size. And so if you get it wrong, they can be quite easy to kill. Back then, the attitude was probably, well, if you lost it or killed it, it's no big deal. You just go out to the wild and grab another one. Like I said earlier on, there wasn't the same concerns back there in the sort of medieval times about animal welfare and things like that. It was very much just, yeah, you take what you need and use. But Snitch here, he is now, I think, Snitch is 4 years old this year. In the wild, he'd have probably had it. In the wild, life is really tough for these guys. I read somewhere that they say 80% of kestrels who make it to the point of leaving the nest will be dead within the first year, and the remaining 20% will be dead by the time they're 3. In captivity, these birds don't have the same pressure on them that they do in the wild, so they will live a lot longer.
That's reassuring to hear. I think we've probably just got time for a couple more questions before we wrap up. And while you've got the kestrel for a knave there, we were asked about the reference of falconry being the sport of kings.
Yes.
Where does that phrase originate from?
It's a good question. I'm not quite sure where it came from. Falconry was very much for the upper classes. For the simple reason, they're the ones that owned the land, and anything on the land belonged to them. So, I mean, if there was a rabbit on the land, and the person who owned the land that was their rabbit. And that kind of rule still applies a little bit today. You can kind of see it with pheasants. Pheasants might be put on an estate for shooting purposes. But if they sort of leave the estate and fly on to somebody else's land, the person on the other land who may have nothing to do with the estate where the pheasant originally came from, they could shoot it, and there'd be nothing that the person who put the pheasant down could say about that. So, like I said, the upper classes are the ones who had access to the land. They were the ones that went hunting. And so it was very much the upper classes. And royalty, if they did it, they would do the sport, and people would want to seem to be in keeping with the royals and they were like the trendsetters, the fashion. And so people would say, yeah, well, the royalty are doing, the king's doing falconry. I want to do falconry. I want to be seen as doing the same as the king. So it may have something to do with that the royals would maybe set the trend, and people would be keen to be sort of seen to be copying them. And it was sort of very exclusive to the upper classes, and it would have been the royalty and people with royal connections probably who owned a lot of the land, and they were the ones that thus who could be doing falconry. So hence why we get the title maybe is known as the sport of kings.
That's great. We should probably just point out as well that the reason that Snitch is making all that noise is because he's a hand-reared bird, isn't he? So he's busy shouting at you because he thinks you can understand him.
He's a full imprint, and so he kind of looks at me as the parent figure. So I've hand-reared him, and he's just sort of shouting a wee bit for attention and food, that's all. But he has been fed, so it's not really just hunger. He's just probably just shouting for a bit of attention and saying that he's happy that he's with me.
And we've had another question from Ethan about owls. He's wanting to know how far the owls can turn their heads round. We saw some lovely examples from Corey earlier when he was refusing to look at the camera, and I think Snitch has done quite a good job as well.
Yeah, this sort of head turning thing is not actually unique to the owls. It's pretty much all birds. And part of the reason for this is they can't move their eyes, and they also can't move the body like we move. So all the movement to save on weight, because obviously to move the way we do takes muscle, and if you want to fly, you don't want a lot of muscle because muscle is heavy. So it's all kind of in the neck. So they have more bones in their neck, which gives them more movement. So pretty much all birds can turn their head almost or just over halfway round. So if you think about 12 o'clock is staring straight ahead, they can sort of get their head clockwise between sort of like 6 and 7 o'clock, and anti-clockwise 5 and 6 o'clock. So they'll cover the full 360, but they can't just do it in one turn. People seem to think owls can turn their heads the whole way around, do the full 360. They can. Funnily enough, the bird I've actually seen have the most movement in its neck, as in the bird of prey, it was an eagle. And I saw the eagle turn its head 180 degrees, so from 12 o'clock down to 6 o'clock, and then pretty much turn its head upside down while it was looking backwards. I have never seen an owl pull a stunt like that. So yeah, the owls have got a lot of movement in their neck, but I think the eagles have got the advantage over them.
Well, I'd like to thank everyone who has sent us questions in. I'm really sorry if we haven't got around to answering any of them, but if there's any that we've missed, we will definitely try and put replies to them in the comments. So thank you very much for all those questions. And I think we're probably just about out of time there. So we will, I'll let Graeme have the final, or possibly Snitch have the final words. But yes, we're just about out of time there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.